The small puppy sat motionless in the middle of the busy street, his ribs visible through matted fur, his eyes following passing cars with a mixture of hope and defeat. Nobody stopped, nobody even slowed down as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on his trembling body. Before we continue this heartbreaking story, if you believe every animal deserves compassion and want to witness incredible rescue journeys, please subscribe to our channel now. As darkness began to fall, the temperature dropped, and still the puppy remained watching, waiting for anyone to notice him. The neighbors had seen him there since morning. Some whispered about calling animal control, others simply closed their curtains pretending not to see the silent plea in those big brown eyes. But then something changed. The atmosphere shifted as a faint sound carried through the evening air. A tiny muffled cry coming from the nearby trash cans, almost inaudible against the background noise of the neighborhood. Puppy's ears perked up, suddenly alert, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten as he struggled to his feet, wobbling toward the source of the sound. His instincts overriding his fear of rejection, his own hunger forgotten in the face of something that called to him on a deeper level. What he found there behind those rusty metal bins would change everything, not just for him, but for everyone who would soon learn their story. The unspoken question, could she herself adopt Max and Luna? The thought had crossed her mind more times than she cared to admit in the quiet moments when she sat with them during her visits, when she watched Max patiently letting Luna climb over him, when she saw Luna seeking out Max for comfort, for warmth, for the security of his presence. But Sarah had always maintained strict boundaries between her work and her home, had always been the one counseling other rescue workers about the dangers of becoming too attached, the impossibility of saving them, all the importance of making rational rather than emotional decisions. "I can't," she said finally, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. "My apartment doesn't allow pets the hours I work. It wouldn't be fair to them." Dr. Chen nodded, accepting the answer, though her eyes reflected doubt. "We'll start meeting with the potential adopters next week. Then we'll see how Max and Luna respond to them. That should tell us a lot." Sarah agreed, pushing down the unexpected wave of sadness that came with the thought of saying goodbye to these two animals who had somehow worked their way past her carefully constructed professional boundaries. The first family arrived on a Tuesday morning, a couple with two teenage children immaculately dressed, driving an expensive SUV. Their application had been perfect detailed, knowledgeable about both species, showing understanding of the special circumstances. "We have a large house with a fenced yard," the father explained as they toured the clinic area where Max and Luna were being kept. "Plenty of space for both of them to exercise." The mother added, "And our children are old enough to help with their care, to understand their needs." On paper, they were ideal, responsible, financially secure. Experienced with pizza yet, when they entered the enclosure, Max immediately positioned himself between them and Luna. His body language, not aggressive but protective, wary, the kitten sensing. His concern stayed close to him rather than displaying her usual curiosity about new people. The family tried everything, offering treats, speaking softly, keeping their movements slow. But the animals remained distant, uncertain. "Sometimes they just need time to adjust to new people," Sarah suggested. But she had seen Max and Luna welcome other visitors with enthusiasm. Something about this family, despite their perfect application, had triggered caution. The second potential adopter came the following day, a middle-aged woman who ran a small animal rescue of her own, a tiny operation compared to the Riverside shelter, but one with an excellent reputation for rehabilitating traumatized animals. "I understand their bond," she told Sarah and Dr. Chen. "I've seen similar connections before, though never quite this strong." She approached Max and Luna with practiced patience, sitting quietly nearby, offering no pressure, no demands, just her calm presence. After several minutes, Max cautiously approached, followed by Luna. The woman smiled but made no move to touch them. allowing them to investigate her on their own terms. "My concern is space," Dr. Chen said later after the woman had left, having made a positive impression on both the staff and the animals. "She lives in a one-bedroom apartment. Max will need room to run as he recovers his strength." Sarah nodded, understanding the concern, but she genuinely understands their trauma, their needs. She'd prioritize their emotional well-being over everything else. They added her to the possibility list, though the space issue remained a significant consideration, especially as Max grew larger, as he would surely do once his nutrition improved. The third visit was scheduled for Friday. A family with two elementary-aged children from a suburban neighborhood with a modestly sized house and yard. The parents were teachers with limited resources compared to the first family, but with flexible summer schedules and a deep commitment to animal welfare. "We've been following their story since your first post," the mother told Sarah as they waited to meet Max and Luna. "Our children have been learning about rescue, about responsibility, about compassion through what you've shared." When they entered the room, something remarkable happened. The younger child, a girl of about 7, sat cross-legged on the floor and waited, making no attempts to approach or call the animals to her, just watching them with quiet interest. After a moment, Max approached, sniffing curiously at her, then returned to Luna, seeming to communicate that this visitor was safe. The kitten wobbled forward, followed closely by her protector, and to everyone's surprise climbed directly into the little girl's lap. The child remained perfectly still, her eyes wide with wonder, as Luna settled herself and began to purr. "She's never done that with a stranger before," Sarah whispered to Dr. Chen, both of them watching as Max cautiously settled nearby, still watchful, but visibly more relaxed than he had been with previous visitors. The older child, a boy of about 10, joined his sister on the floor, moving slowly, carefully, under the watchful eyes of both the adults and Max. "They can tell," the boy said softly, "not reaching for either animal, but simply observing them. They know we wouldn't separate them." It was this comment that caught Sarah's attention, the intuitive understanding that the primary concern wasn't just finding a home for these animals, but preserving the connection that had saved both their lives. When she questioned him later, the boy explained it would be like separating family. They chose each other when they had nothing else. There was wisdom in his words, a clarity that cut through the practical considerations, the adult concerns about space and resources and logistics, to the heart of what mattered most to Max and Luna themselves. After the family left, Sarah and Dr. Chen sat in thoughtful silence, both affected by what they had witnessed. "The first family has the most resources," Dr. Chen acknowledged. "The second has the most experience. But that third family, there's something about how the animals responded to them." Sarah nodded. "The children especially. That level of intuitive understanding is rare." They agreed to sleep on the decision to review all three options again before making a final recommendation. But in her heart, Sarah already knew which family had formed the most genuine connection with Max and Luna, which home would best honor the bond that had captured the world's attention. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep, her mind replaying each family visit, analyzing their interactions with Max and Luna, questioning whether the animals' apparent preference for the third family was enough to outweigh the practical advantages of the other options. She tossed and turned in her small apartment, haunted by the image of Max's watchful eyes. Luna's tiny form vulnerable, yet growing stronger each day, the bond between them that had defied all expectations, the bond she had witnessed. From its first moments in that darkened streether, phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. "Just checked on them both, sleeping peacefully." Luna curled against Max as usual, "Thought you'd want to know." Attached was a photo taken in the dim night lighting of the clinic, the puppy and kitten nestled together on their shared bed, Luna almost invisible against Max's fur, except for the white patch on her chest. Sarah found herself smiling at the image, even as a wave of protectiveness washed over her. These two had fought so hard to survive, had formed a connection so pure, so instinctive, it seemed almost sacred. The thought of making the wrong decision about their future felt unbearable. The next morning, she arrived at the clinic earlier than usual, needing to see them, needing the simple comfort of their presence before facing the decision that loomed ahead. She found them already awake, Max patiently watching as Luna practiced her increasingly coordinated pouncing skills, her tiny body launching itself at a feather toy a clinic technician was moving for her. When the kitten noticed Sarah, she abandoned her game and wobbled over, meowing insistently until Sarah picked her up, Max following closely, his tail wagging in greeting. "Someone's feeling better," Sarah observed. As Luna began purring immediately in her hands, the vibration so strong it seemed impossible from such a tiny body. Max pressed against her legs, looking up expectantly until she crouched down to scratch behind his ears. "You two are making this very difficult, you know that, right?" she told them, not caring that the technician was watching with barely concealed amusement. "I'm supposed to be a professional. Not getting attached is literally the first rule of rescue work." "Rules are overrated," the technician commented with a smile as she gathered up the toys, "especially when they're up against exceptions like these two." She nodded toward Max and Luna. "Some stories don't follow the usual script, Sarah. Some connections defy the normal boundaries. That's what makes them special." There was wisdom in her words, wisdom. Sarah needed to hear a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful paths were the ones that couldn't be found on any map that hadn't been walked before. Dr. Chen arrived an hour later, looking as though she too had spent a restless night. "I've been thinking about our options," she said as she examined Luna, checking her weight, her responsiveness, her overall development. "And I keep coming back to what we witnessed with that third family, particularly the children." Sarah nodded. "Me too. There was something there, something genuine, a kind of understanding that went beyond the practical considerations." The veterinarian smiled. "Exactly, which is why I think we should invite them back. Give them a longer visit, see if that initial connection deepens." The family returned that afternoon, the children barely containing their excitement as they entered the clinic. "We brought something," the little girl said, holding out a hand-drawn picture of Max and Luna surrounded by hearts and stars. "It's for their new home, wherever that is." The sincerity in her voice touched Sarah's heart, the lack of presumption, the acceptance that the decision would be based on what was best for the animals, not on their own desires. The boy had brought something too, a small soft toy he'd saved his allowance to purchase. "I read that kittens need things to practice hunting on," he explained, placing it carefully on the floor near where Max and Luna were watching, "and that dogs like Max need mental stimulation as they recover from trauma." Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Chen, both impressed by the research, the thoughtfulness behind the gifts. Once again, the animals responded to the family with what could only be described as recognition. Max allowing the boy to gently stroke his back, Luna climbing into the girl's lap as if returning to a familiar, safe place. As the visit continued, Sarah observed the parents as well, noting how they supervised without hovering, offered guidance without controlling, allowed their children to form their own connection with the animals while ensuring everyone's safety and comfort. They asked intelligent questions about Max and Luna's medical needs, their dietary requirements, their potential behavioral challenges, showing a realistic understanding of what they would be taking on. "We know it won't always be this heartwarming," the mother acknowledged. When Sarah raised the question of long-term commitment, there will be challenges as they grow, as they develop their individual personalities. But we're prepared for that. We see them as family already, family you commit to through everything after. The family left, promising to respect whatever decision was made. Sarah and Dr. Chen sat down with the clinic director to finalize their recommendation. "I think we all know where this is heading," the director said. Having observed the last part of the visit, Those children have a natural gift with animals, and the parents have the right approach, not overly sentimental, but deeply committed. Dr. Chen agreed. Medically speaking, both animals are stable enough for adoption. Now Max will need ongoing nutritional support. Luna still needs specialized feeding, but these are things the family can be taught. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. I keep thinking about the other options, the first family with more resources, the rescuer with more experience, she admitted. But then I remember how Max positioned himself between Luna and the first family, how guarded they both remained. And I know that animals sense things we can't always articulate. The others nodded, understanding. Her concerns, her desire to consider all angles before making a final recommendation. Ultimately, we have to trust what Max and Luna themselves have shown us about where they feel safe, where they feel at home. The decision made, Sarah found herself sitting alone with Max and Luna that evening, experiencing a bittersweet mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She was confident they would be going to the right home, would be loved, protected, allowed to grow together, but she couldn't deny the attachment. She herself had formed the way these two had somehow worked their way past her professional boundaries into her heart. "I'm going to miss you," she whispered as Luna climbed onto her lap, Max settling at her feet, his eyes watching the kitten with his characteristic attentiveness. "But I'll visit, I promise." As if understanding her words, Luna looked up at her with those bright blue kitten eyes that were growing more alert, more aware each day. Max rested his head on Sarah's knee, his expression somehow combining contentment and gratitude. "You two found each other in the darkest moment," she told them, stroking them both. "And in doing so, you reminded me why I do this work, why it matters even when it breaks my heart, in the quiet of the show." Clinic with night falling outside, Sarah allowed herself to simply be present with them, to cherish this moment, to acknowledge that sometimes the greatest gift of rescue work wasn't just saving lives, but being transformed by the lives you saved. The day of the adoption arrived sooner than Sarah had expected, a bright Saturday morning that seemed determined to match the occasion with perfect weather. The foster family. The Thompsons had visited twice more in the preceding week, bringing items to familiarize Max and Luna with their scents, learning the feeding and medication routines, practicing the handling techniques Dr. Chen had taught them today. They would take Max and Luna home, officially becoming their family the clinic had prepared. A care package of specialized food medication, detailed instructions, and the bed the animals had shared throughout their recovery. Zora arrived early, helping the staff prepare everything, trying to focus on the practical details rather than the emotional weight of the day. Their social media accounts have over 50,000 followers now. One of the technicians mentioned as they gathered supplies, people from all over the world following their recovery. What had begun as Sarah's personal post had evolved into dedicated accounts managed by the clinic, sharing Max and Luna's journey, their milestones, their growing bond. Now those accounts would transition to the Thompsons, who had thoughtfully promised to maintain the connection with the community that had formed around the animal's story. "Are you ready for this?" Dr. Chen asked, finding Sarah alone in the exam room organizing medication bottles into labeled containers. "No," Sarah admitted with a small laugh. "But that's not the point, is it? They're ready, that's what matters." The veterinarian nodded, understanding. "They'll always be part of your story, Sarah, just as you'll always be part of theirs. Some rescues stay with us more than others." There's no shame in acknowledging that her words offered permission for the feeling Sarah had been trying to suppress, the attachment she had formed, despite her best professional intentions. The Thompsons arrived precisely on time, the children dressed in their best clothes, as if for a special occasion, which in many ways it was. Mrs. Thompson carried a new pet carrier lined with soft blankets. Mr. Thompson had a specially designed harness for Max, one that would allow him to walk comfortably while still building his strength. "We can't thank you enough," he told Sarah and Dr. Chen. not just for trusting us with them, but for saving them in the first place, for showing our children what compassion in action looks like. The actual handover was both simpler and more difficult than Sarah had anticipated. Max went willingly to the boy, his tail wagging, as if he somehow understood this was the next chapter in his journey. Luna allowed herself to be placed in the carrier, meowing in protest, only until Max came to check on her through the mesh window, then settling down with her characteristic adaptability. Only Sarah seemed to be struggling, fighting back tears as she went through the final instructions, reviewed the medication schedule, confirmed the follow-up appointments. "You can visit any time," Mrs. Thompson said quietly, noticing Sarah's emotion. "We mean that they wouldn't be alive without you. They'll never forget you, and neither will we." It was a generous offer, one that acknowledged the bond Sarah had formed with Max and Luna while gently transitioning primary care to their new family. "I'd like that." Sarah managed her voice steadier than she felt, to see how they adjust, how they grow, especially as Luna developed from kitten to cat. As Max regained his full strength, there would be new challenges, new developments in their unusual relationship, as the Thompsons prepared to leave the clinic. Director appeared with a small wrapped package. "We have something for you," she told them, "a token of this special day." Inside was a framed photo of Max and Luna from their first week at the clinic. The puppy curled protectively around the tiny kitten, along with 2 paw prints preserved in clay, one small but distinct from Max, one barely visible from Luna. "So you'll always remember how their journey began," the director explained. "Even as you helped them write the rest of their story, there were tears, then not just from Sarah, but from the clinic staff, from Mrs. Thompson, even from the usually stoic Dr. Chen." The children approached Sarah last, the girl hugging her tightly, the boy shaking her hand with solemn formality. "We promised to take care of them," he said with the serious conviction only a child can muster, "and to tell everyone their story, so people will understand about rescuing animals, about not abandoning them." It was perhaps the greatest gift they could have offered, not just a home for Max and Luna, but a commitment to the larger mission, to the work that had defined Sarah's life. After they left, Sarah stood in the suddenly quiet clinic, feeling the absence of Max and Luna in a way she hadn't anticipated. The empty space where their enclosure had been seemed to echo with memories of their recovery, their resilience, their remarkable bond. Dr. Chen found her there, still standing still, processing. "You did good." The veterinarian said simply, "They're going to have an amazing life because of you." Sarah nodded, knowing it was true, knowing she had made the right decision, yet still feeling the bittersweet ache of goodbye. "What now?" she asked, almost to herself, but Dr. Chen answered anyway. "Now you take the rest of the day off, you let yourself feel whatever you need to feel, and tomorrow you come back to help the next ones, because there are always next ones." It was the fundamental truth of rescue work, the never-ending cycle of need, the constant stream of animals requiring intervention care, love, the impossibility of saving them all, balanced against the profound importance of saving the ones you could max. And Luna had been saved against all odds, had touched countless lives through their story, had reminded a cynical world that connection and compassion still existed. Sarah drove home in a daze, her emotions too complex to untangle in the moment, pride in Max and Luna's recovery, satisfaction in finding them, the perfect home, grief at their absence from her daily life, hope for their future, all swirling together into something that defied simple categorization. She had expected to feel relieved to have closure on this case that had consumed so much of her time and energy. Instead, she felt strangely hollow, as if something essential had been removed, something she hadn't realized had become part of her. Apartment seemed emptier than usual, though Max and Luna had never been there, had never filled the space with their presence. Somehow their absence was tangible. Anyway, she moved through her evening routine mechanically, checking her phone periodically. for updates the Thompsons had promised to send, though it was probably too soon. Finally, around 8 o'clock, a message arrived, a photo of Max and Luna exploring their new home together, the puppy still staying close to the kitten as she investigated. A cat tree specially purchased for her. The caption read simply, "Home safe. Thank you for everything." Something loosened in Sarah's chest at the sight of them, safe, secure, beginning their new life together. She sat on her couch staring at the image, letting the tears come, finally releasing the emotion she had held in check. Throughout the day, the sweet sorrow of a successful rescue, the paradoxical pain of achieving exactly what she had worked toward, a good home, a new beginning, a second chance. For two creatures who had started with nothing but each other. In the gathering darkness, Sarah made a decision, reaching for her laptop, opening the Riverside Shelter's website, clicking on the volunteer application form. Maybe it was time for a change. Time to honor what Max and Luna had taught her about connection, about purpose, about the healing power of caring for others who needed it most. 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Sarah had submitted her application to volunteer at Riverside Shelter and, to her surprise, had been called in for a meeting with the director, Margaret Wilson, a formidable woman who had run the facility for over 15 years. "I'll be honest," Margaret said after they exchanged pleasantries. "I was surprised to see your application. You've been working in field rescue for, 5 years now?" Sarah nodded, confirming the timeline. "So why the interest in shifting to shelter work, especially as a volunteer, when you're already stretched thin?" It was a fair question, one Sarah had been asking herself since the night she'd impulsively filled out the application. The Max and Luna case changed something. "For me," she admitted, "I've always focused on the rescue part, getting animals out of dangerous situations, bringing them to safety. But I never stayed long enough to see what happened next, to be part of their healing, their transition to new homes." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I think I need that complete circle now, to see not just the beginning but the middle and end of their journeys." Margaret studied her thoughtfully. "You know, shelter work isn't all heartwarming adoptions and success. Stories we face, overcrowding, limited resources, difficult decisions every day." Sarah nodded, understanding the warning. "I know, but I also know that every animal deserves someone who sees them as an individual, not just a case number I want to be. That person for more of them, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard." Something in her answer seemed to satisfy Margaret, who smiled for the first time since Sarah had entered her office. "We're starting a new program, actually," she said, leaning forward. Inspired partly by the attention Max and Luna's story brought to rescue work, we're calling it the Bonded Pairs Initiative, focusing on animals who come in together or form strong attachments in the shelter, the ones who traditionally have been hardest to place. Sarah felt a surge of interest, remembering Max's protective behavior toward Luna, the connection that had developed between them against all odds. "We've secured some grant funding, but what we really need is someone to coordinate. It's someone who understands these special bonds." The offer was unexpected, but felt somehow inevitable, as if Max and Luna had been leading her toward this moment all along. "You want me to run the program?" Sarah clarified, hardly daring to believe. "It, as a paid position, yes," Margaret confirmed. "Part-time to start, but with potential to grow. If we can demonstrate success, it would mean identifying bonded pairs, developing specialized adoption protocols, creating training for staff and potential adopters, educational outreach, the works." It was exactly the kind of meaningful work Sarah had been craving, a way to honor what she had witnessed between Max and Luna. By helping other animals with similar bonds, I'd need to continue my field rescue work, at least part-time, Sarah said, thinking aloud. "There are ongoing cases I can't just abandon." Margaret nodded, understanding. "We can work around that, structure the hours to accommodate your existing commitments." She slid a folder across the desk. "Here's the formal proposal, including salary and expectations. Take some time to think about it, but I'll need an answer." By next week, we want to launch the program before the end of the month. Sarah accepted the folder, feeling a sense of possibility, opening before her a new chapter that somehow felt connected to the one that had just closed at home. Sarah found herself checking social media for updates on Max and Luna before even opening Margaret's proposal. The Thompsons posted regularly, sharing photos and short videos documenting the animals' adjustment to their new home. Today's post showed Luna, now nearly twice the size she'd been at her adoption, attempting to climb the living room curtains while Max watched from below, his expression somehow managing to convey both amusement and concern. The caption read, "Someone discovered her climbing skills today. Max isn't sure if he should be impressed or worried. Are growing up too quickly?" Sarah smiled at the image, at the evidence that Luna was developing normal kitten behaviors while Max maintained his protective yet allowing presence she had worried about. Worried that as Luna grew into her cat nature, as Max recovered his full dog vitality, their unusual bond might diminish, might be replaced by the typical cat-dog wariness that characterized most interspecies relationships in homes. But so far, they seem to be navigating the transition, their connection evolving rather than disappearing, adapting to their changing needs while maintaining its essential character. The Thompsons had kept their promise, inviting Sarah to visit anytime she had been once so far. 2 weeks after the adoption, finding Max and Luna thoroughly settled in their new environment. The children had proudly shown her all the preparations they had made, the special beds placed strategically throughout the house, the toys, the scratching posts, the window purchase for Luna, the secure yard where Max could safely exercise. Sarah had watched Max gently nudge a ball toward the boy, initiating play, had seen Luna curl up purring in the girl's lap, had felt the rightness of the match between this family and these animals who had started with so little, opening Margaret's proposal. Now Sarah felt a sense of things, a lining of purpose emerging from what had initially seemed like just another rescue case, albeit an unusual one. The Bonded Pairs initiative could help so many animals like Max and Luna, could change the way shelters approached unusual connections between animals, could educate the public about the depth and complexity of animal relationships. The proposal was comprehensive, thoughtful, reflecting Margaret's years of experience in shelter management and Sarah's recent first-hand experience. With a remarkable Bonded Pairs, she read through the details. Sarah's phone chimed with a text from Dr. Chen. "Thought you might want to see this," accompanied by a video clip. She clicked play to find Max and Luna at their 1-month checkup. Max considerably heavier, his coat gleaming with health. Luna now looking like a proper kitten, active, playful, but still returning to Max frequently for reassurance, for connection. The veterinarian had captured a moment when Luna, after exploring the exam room, had jumped back onto the table where Max was sitting, immediately pressing her body against his, her tiny head butting under his chin, his posture relaxing visibly at her return. Their bond clear, undiminished, evolving, but fundamental. The sight reinforced Sarah's growing conviction that the Bonded Pairs initiative was her next right step, a way to honor what she had witnessed between these two animals by creating opportunities for others like them. "I'll do it," she texted Margaret, not needing the week to decide, knowing in her heart that this was where she was meant to go next. The director's response came quickly. "Knew you would welcome aboard," followed by details about an orientation session scheduled for the following Monday, the beginning of this new chapter. That night, Sarah dreamed of the street where she had found Max and Luna, but transformed now. Trees growing where there had been only concrete, flowers pushing up through cracks in the pavement, and everywhere, animals moving freely, safely in pairs, supporting each other as they navigated what had once been a landscape of danger and neglect. She woke with tears on her face, but they were different tears than the ones she had shed when saying goodbye to Max and Luna. These were tears of possibility, of purpose, of the profound understanding that sometimes our greatest pain leads us precisely where we need to go. The Bonded Pairs initiative launched with more attention than Sarah had anticipated. The local news station that had initially covered Max and Luna's story returned to do a feature on the new program interviewing Sarah Margaret and Dr. Chen about the importance of recognizing and preserving animal bonds. "We've always known that some animals form special attachments," Sarah explained to the reporter, "but the story of Max and Luna showed us just how powerful these bonds can be, how they can literally save lives." Footage of the now thriving pair played alongside her words. The contrast between their current healthy appearance and the desperate creatures Sarah had found that night stark and compelling. The community response was immediate. Shelters across the city began reaching out, asking for guidance on identifying and supporting bonded pairs. Rescue organizations inquired about joint efforts. Foster families volunteered specifically for the program. Even corporate sponsors expressed interest in providing funding for what was quickly becoming a movement. Rather than just a shelter initiative, Sarah found herself at the center of it all, coordinating training sessions, responding to media requests, developing protocols for assessing, and supporting animal bonds while still maintaining her field rescue work, albeit on a reduced schedule. "You've started something important here," Dr. Chen told her one evening as they met for coffee after their respective workdays. "I've already seen changes in how my veterinary colleagues approach bonded animals cases that previously might have been separated, for medical reasons are now being kept together whenever possible." Sarah nodded, understanding the significance of this shift. "It's not just about Max and Luna anymore, is it? It's about fundamentally changing how we view animal relationships, how we respect their emotional lives." The veterinarian smiled. "Exactly, and that's no small thing." The first official case for the initiative came 3 weeks after the program launched. A senior beagle and a middle-aged cat brought in together. After their elderly owner passed away, the shelter staff might once have separated them, placing them in the appropriate dog and cat sections, but now they watched, observed, documented the animals' behaviors with their newly trained eyes, noticing how the cat became distressed when separated from the dog, how the beagle searched for his feline companion when she was taken for a medical examination, how they slept, pressed against each other in their shared enclosure. They've been together for at least 8 years, according to the neighbor who brought them in, Sarah told the potential adopter, a retired teacher who had specifically asked about bonded pairs. "Senior animals are already difficult to place, and bonded seniors even more so, but these two deserve to stay together for whatever time they have left." The woman nodded, watching as the beagle gently made room for the cat on the small bed they were sharing. "I understand I lost my husband last year. I know something about adjusting to life without your person, but with your partner still by your side, the adoption was approved, the first success story for the initiative." A photograph of the woman with her 2 new companions featured prominently on the shelter's website and social media channels. "This is what it's all about," Margaret said, showing Sarah the numbers of shares and supportive comments the post had generated, changing the narrative about what makes an animal adoptable, seeing the bond as an asset rather than a complication. Sarah agreed, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the satisfaction of a single successful placement. This was systemic change, the kind that could improve countless animal lives. As the program grew, so did public interest in Max and Luna's continuing story. The Thompsons regularly shared updates now to an audience of over 100,000 followers. The kitten had grown into a sleek adolescent cat, her playful energy sometimes overwhelming in the videos she pounced on. Max's tail climbed his back while he patiently napped, knocked over houseplants in typical cat fashion. Yet the bond between them remained evident in quiet moments, captured on camera. Luna still sleeping curled against Max's side, still seeking him out. when, startled by strange noises, Max still watching over her with that characteristic attentive gaze 3 months after. The adoption, Sarah visited the Thompson home again, bringing a small gift to mark what they had begun calling Rescue Day, the anniversary of that fateful evening when she had found Max and Luna. "We can't believe how much she's grown," Mrs. Thompson said as they watched Luna race through the house in pursuit of a toy mouse. "And how patient he is with her," Mr. Thompson added as Max carefully stepped around the zooming kitten, making space for her antics without discouraging them. The children had created a scrapbook documenting the animal's journey from rescue to present day, complete with newspaper clippings, photographs, and their own drawings. "We talk about them at school," the boy told Sarah proudly. "My teacher let me do a whole presentation about animal rescue and bonded pairs. Some of the other kids' parents contacted the shelter afterward about adopting." The girl nodded eagerly. "And we raised money at the bake sale for your program." She pointed to a page in the scrapbook showing a table decorated with pictures of Max and Luna offering cookies and cupcakes to smiling customers. Sarah felt a wave of emotion seeing how far the ripples had spread from that single act of stopping her car that night. Max recognized Sarah immediately, greeting her with enthusiastic tail wagging. Luna, more reserved now in her developing cat identity, observed from a distance before approaching to sniff curiously at the human who had once been so central to her life. "She remembers you," the girl whispered as Luna eventually climbed into Sarah's lap, settling there with a rumbling purr. "They both do." Watching the cat close her eyes in contentment, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey they had all taken together, the ways they had changed each other's lives, the countless other lives that had been touched as a result. After leaving the Thompsons' home, Sarah drove to the Riverside Shelter for an evening event, celebrating the Bonded Pairs Initiative's first quarter of operations. In that short time, they had successfully placed 15 bonded pairs, ranging from the expected dog duos and cat siblings to more unusual combinations like the beagle and cat-a-rabbit with a guinea pig, even a chicken and duck that had been rescued. Together from a neglectful situation, each placement representing not just animals saved, but a growing public awareness of the complexity and importance of animal relationships. The shelter had been transformed for the evening with before and after. Photos of successful adoptions, testimonials from new owners, statistics on the program's impact. Even national media had taken notice, with a major animal welfare organization expressing interest in implementing similar initiatives across their network of shelters. "I never imagined it would grow this big this quickly," Sarah admitted to Margaret as they surveyed the crowded room. "It just shows how ready people were for this perspective, how hungry they were for stories of connection in a disconnected world," the director nodded. "And it all started because you stopped your car that night." The simple truth of that statement struck Sarah deeply. How easily it might have gone differently. How close she had come to driving past, continuing on her way exhausted and discouraged. How many other Max and Lunas might be out there right now, waiting for someone to notice them, to see their value, their capacity for connection, their will to survive. And suddenly she understood with perfect clarity that this was only the beginning, that the real work, the important work, was just getting started, and she was exactly where she needed to be to do it. 6 months into the Bonded Pairs Initiative, Sarah received a call that brought her story with Max and Luna, Full Circle Officer James Rodriguez from Animal Crimes, the same officer who had tracked down the person responsible for abandoning the Lioripau puppy and kitten, was on the line, his voice carrying a mix of satisfaction and solemnity. "We got a conviction," he informed her. "Maximum penalties on all counts, plus a lifetime ban on pet ownership." It had been a long legal process, the former owners fighting the charges, claiming they had intended to return for the animals, that the abandonment had been temporary, that they hadn't understood the severity of their actions. The judge cited Max and Luna's story specifically in the sentencing. Officer Rodriguez continued, said that their case had raised community awareness about animal abandonment, had demonstrated the real suffering and danger these animals face when discarded. Sarah felt a complex wave of emotions at the news, not joy exactly. Justice rarely felt joyful, but a sense of completion of a wrong being acknowledged. A message being sent that animals weren't disposable conveniences to be thrown away when they became inconvenient. Will this be made public? She asked, thinking of the educational impact the case might have already is. The officer confirmed. Press release went out this morning. There's talk of using it as part of a public awareness campaign about animal abandonment. The department's had more reports of suspected cruelty in the last 6 months than in the previous 2 years. Combined people are paying attention now. They're not looking away anymore. That was perhaps the most meaningful outcome of all, Sarah reflected after ending the call. Not just the punishment of one person's actions, but the awakening of an entire community to their responsibility to the vulnerable animals in their midst. She shared the news with Dr. Chen and Margaret, both of whom had been following the case closely since the beginning. Closure, the veterinarian said thoughtfully, for the legal aspect at least, though I suspect the real closure happened when Max and Luna found their forever home. Margaret nodded. Sometimes justice and healing move on separate tracks. But it matters that there are consequences. It matters that the system recognized the harm done. Sarah agreed, thinking of how to frame the news when she called the Thompsons to let them know, wondering how much to share with the children who had become so invested in Max and Luna's story. The Thompsons received the news with quiet satisfaction, Mrs. Thompson promising to explain it to the children in age-appropriate terms. They understand that something bad happened to Max and Luna before. They came to us, she told Sarah, but they also understand that their story didn't end with the bad parts, that rescue and healing were possible. It was a perspective Sarah appreciated, one that balanced honesty about the realities of animal cruelty, with hope for rehabilitation, for second chances, for the possibility that even the worst beginnings could lead to beautiful outcomes. That weekend, Sarah was invited to a special event at the Thompson home, a small gathering to celebrate Max's first birthday, or at least the date the veterinarians had estimated as his birthday. Based on his development when he arrived at the clinic, Luna, now a lanky adolescent cat with gleaming gray fur and bright, curious eyes, would have her celebration in a few months. When she reached her own milestone, the house was decorated with balloons and streamers. The children had made a large poster covered with photographs documenting Max's journey from the frightened, malnourished puppy Sarah had found to the healthy, confident dog he had become. "We have something to show you," Mrs. Thompson said, leading Sarah to the backyard where Mr. Thompson and the children waited beside what appeared to be a large covered object. "Ready?" he asked them, and at their enthusiastic nods, he pulled away the covering to reveal a beautifully constructed doghouse painted in bright colors, with a sign above the door that read, "Max's home where all are welcome." The inside, visible through the open front, contained 2 beds side by side, 1 dog-sized, 1 cat-sized, a testament to the continuing bond between the unlikely pair. "We built it together," the boy explained proudly. "Dad helped with the cutting, but we did the painting and decorating." The girl pointed to small painted paw prints running along the base of the structure. "The blue ones are Max's, the gray ones are Luna's. They go all the way around because they're always together." Sarah crouched down to examine their handiwork, noting the careful attention to details, the ramp for easier access as Max aged, the ventilation windows, the water-resistant roof. "It's beautiful," she told them sincerely. "One of the nicest doghouses I've ever seen." "It's not just a doghouse," the girl corrected gently. "It's a home for both of them, see." She pointed inside where Luna had already discovered the structure and was curled up on the smaller bed. Investigating this new addition to her territory, Max approached cautiously, sniffing at the entrance, before, stepping inside, settling on his bed with a contented sigh, as if recognizing that this space had been created specifically for him, for them, for the unique relationship they shared. They understand it's theirs, the boy observed, watching the animals explore. They know it was made with love. The simple wisdom of his statement struck Sarah deeply. This was indeed what made a structure a home, what transformed care into healing, what changed mere survival into thriving, the knowledge that you belonged, that you were seen, valued, welcomed for exactly who you were. The Thompsons had given Max and Luna not just safety and medical care, but this deeper gift of belonging, of being cherished for their individual qualities, and for the remarkable bond they shared with each other as the celebration continued, with a dog-friendly cake for Max, regular treats for Luna, and much laughter from the children. Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them all to this moment, the seemingly random intersection of lives that had created something meaningful and lasting. The night she had almost driven past the small puppy in the road, the cry from the trash that had altered everything, the countless decisions, large and small, that had led to this backyard, this family, these animals living their best lives together. Penny, for your thoughts, Mr. Thompson asked, joining her at the edge of the yard where she stood watching the scene. Just thinking about connections, Sarah replied. How we never really know where they'll lead, how one moment of stopping to help can create ripples we never imagined. He nodded, understanding. The children talk about that a lot, actually, about how if you hadn't stopped, if Max hadn't heard Luna, if the clinic hadn't been willing to try against the odds, how different everything would be, not just for these two animals, but for all of us. He gestured to his family, to the thriving pets, to the celebration unfolding around them. Their story became part of our story, and now it's becoming part of so many others. The wisdom of this perspective settled around Sarah like a comfortable blanket, the recognition that no act of compassion existed in isolation, that connections once formed continued to expand in ways we might never fully comprehend or witness, that the boundaries between human and animal, between rescuer and rescued, between past and future, were more permeable, more fluid than we often acknowledged, and that therein lay both the challenge and the beauty of the work she had committed herself to doing. 1 year after Max and Luna's rescue, Sarah sat in the Riverside Shelter's conference room, surrounded by colleagues from animal welfare organizations across the state. They had gathered for the first annual Bonded Pairs Conference, a day-long event featuring presentations, research findings, adoption success stories, and panel discussions, all focused on the importance of recognizing and preserving animal bonds. The initiative that had begun as a small shelter program had grown beyond anyone's expectations, spreading to facilities throughout the region, changing policies, practices, and, most importantly, outcomes for countless animals who might otherwise have been separated from their companions. I never expected to be standing here today, Sarah admitted as she began her keynote address. Never imagined that stopping for one puppy in the street would lead to all of this. The room was filled with people who had implemented their own versions of the Bonded Pairs program, who had stories of their own to share, who had witnessed firsthand the difference it made when animal connections were honored rather than dismissed. What began as an emergency rescue became something much larger, a reminder that animals, like humans, form deep, meaningful attachments that deserve our respect and protection. She shared the latest update on Max and Luna, now thriving in their forever home. Max, fully grown into a handsome, medium-sized dog with a glossy coat and confident bearing. Luna, a sleek, adult cat with striking green eyes and typical feline independence. Their bond had evolved as they matured, maintaining its essential character while adapting to their changing needs. They no longer slept, pressed together at all times, Luna now claiming high perches and windowsills as cats are wont to do, but they still sought each other out in moments of stress, still played together, still clearly preferred each other's company to solitude. Their relationship isn't static, Sarah explained, showing recent photos the Thompsons had shared. It's dynamic, responsive to their individual development and needs just like human relationships. This was an important point, one that the initiative had incorporated into their education materials, the understanding that bonded pairs, especially cross-species ones, would evolve over time, that success wasn't measured by perpetual togetherness, but by the animal's overall well-being and security. The goal isn't dependency, but healthy attachment, the knowledge that their companion is there when needed. After her presentation, Sarah participated in a panel discussion alongside Dr. Chen, Margaret, and representatives from other shelters, all sharing their experiences with implementing bonded pairs programs, the challenges they'd faced, the creative solutions they'd developed, the metrics they used to evaluate success. Questions from the audience revealed the growing sophistication of the field, the nuanced understanding that was emerging about animal relationships, about the factors that strengthened or threatened bonds, about the best practices for supporting connections while encouraging healthy independence. The most frequent question we get is how to identify true bonds versus casual friendships. One shelter manager shared, "We've developed an assessment protocol that looks at stress responses, separation anxiety, proximity-seeking behaviors. Over time, it's not perfect, but it helps us distinguish between animals who prefer each other's company and those who genuinely suffer when separated." Others nodded, recognizing the common challenge, the need for careful, thoughtful evaluation rather than assumptions or anthropomorphism, the balance between honoring bonds and avoiding unnecessarily limiting adoption options. During the lunch break, Sarah checked her phone, finding a message from Mrs. Thompson. Perfect timing, the text read, accompanied by a video. She clicked play to see Max and Luna in what appeared to be a game they had developed. Luna hiding behind furniture, then darting out to swat playfully at Max's tail as he pretended not to notice, then spinning around at the last moment to gently chase her before letting her escape and hide again. Their communication was clear, their enjoyment mutual, their understanding of each other's boundaries and preferences evident in every movement. "They invented this game last week," Mrs. Thompson had written. "They play it every afternoon now." Sarah shared the video with Dr. Chen, who smiled. In recognition, "Remember when we worried they might grow apart as Luna developed normal cat behaviors?" the veterinarian mused. "But they've done exactly what healthy bonded pairs do, adapted their relationship to accommodate their individual needs while maintaining their connection." It was a validation of everything they had been working toward, the proof that with proper support and understanding, bonded animals could thrive together, long-term could build relationships as complex and enduring as any human friendship. The afternoon sessions focused on practical applications of the bonded pairs philosophy, specialized housing options for keeping pairs together in shelter environments, creative adoption marketing strategies to find the right homes, training protocols for staff and volunteers, success stories that reinforce the value of the work through concrete examples of lives improved, both animal and human. Sarah took careful notes, planning to implement the best ideas at Riverside. Knowing that continuous improvement, refinement, adaptation were essential to long-term success, at the end of the day, as participants gathered for a closing reception, Sarah found herself approached by a woman she didn't recognize, who introduced herself as the director of a national animal welfare organization. "We've been watching your program with great interest," she said, after the preliminaries. "The data you've collected, the outcomes you've achieved, they're impressive by any standard." Sarah thanked her for the acknowledgement, aware of the woman's influence in the field, the potential impact of her approval. "We're considering incorporating your protocols into our national guidelines, recommending them to our partner shelters across the country." The implications of this were enormous. The possibility that what had begun with Max and Luna might eventually affect animal welfare practices nationwide might change the standard of care for bonded animals everywhere. "We would be honored," Sarah replied carefully, "though we're still learning, still developing our approach." The director nodded understanding. "That's precisely why we're interested. The humility, the commitment to ongoing improvement, the recognition that this is evolving work rather than a fixed solution." She handed Sarah her card. "Let's talk next week about how we might collaborate moving forward." As the conference concluded, Sarah found herself standing beside a display of before and after photographs. Max and Luna's story featured prominently alongside dozens of other successful bonded pair adoptions from various participating shelters, each image pair telling a story of transformation, of healing, of connection preserved against the odds. A volunteer approached hesitantly. "Are you Sarah Miller?" she asked. "The one who found Max and Luna?" When Sarah nodded, the young woman continued, "I just wanted to say thank you. Their story is what inspired me to start volunteering. I've been helping with our shelter's Bonded Pairs program for 6 months now, and it's changed how I see everything. Not just animals, but relationships, connection, resilience." Walking to her car afterwards, Sarah reflected on the ripple effects that continued to expand outward. From that single moment of decision to stop for a puppy in the street, the lives touched, the policies changed, the awareness raised, the compassion awakened in a community that had previously looked away, and she understood with profound clarity that this was how transformation happened, not through grand gestures or sweeping reforms, but through individual acts of attention and care, through the recognition of value in those society had deemed disposable, through the stubborn insistence that connection mattered, that suffering mattered, that every life, however small, however seemingly insignificant, deserved to be seen. 18 months after the rescue on a crisp autumn morning, Sarah received a phone call from Mrs. Thompson, her voice uncharacteristically tense. "It's Luna," she said without preamble. "Something's wrong. She's been lethargic, not eating. Max is beside himself, following her everywhere, refusing to leave her side even to go outside." Sarah felt her stomach tighten, knowing how unusual this behavior was for both animals. Luna now a spirited young cat, typically independent yet sociable, Max generally confident, secure in their bond, but comfortable with separation during normal activities. "Have you called Dr. Chen?" she asked. Already reaching for her car keys. "We're headed there now," Mrs. Thompson confirmed. "I just wanted you to know, thought you might want to meet us." There was no question Sarah would go. Her connection to Max and Luna remained strong despite the passage of time, despite the many other animals she had helped through the Bonded Pairs program. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. She promised, already calculating the fastest route to the veterinary clinic where Dr. Chen still practiced, where Max and Luna still received their care, the clinic that had saved them both against overwhelming odds all those months ago. She arrived. Just as the Thompsons were unloading from their car, Mr. Thompson carrying a pet carrier from which came the low, anxious whine of Max, Mrs. Thompson. Holding Luna wrapped in a blanket, the cat's normally alert expression replaced by a disturbing stillness. The children followed behind their faces. Solemn, worried Dr. Chen had been alerted to their arrival and met them at the door, immediately ushering them into an exam room. "Tell me everything," she instructed, as she gently took Luna from Mrs. Thompson's arms. "When did you first notice something was wrong?" As the Thompsons explained the progression of Luna's symptoms, the gradual decrease in activity, the refusal of food, the occasional strange posture, as if she were in pain. Dr. Chen conducted her examination with careful efficiency, Max watching every movement from where he sat, pressed against Mr. Thompson's legs, his eyes never leaving Luna's form on the examination table. "I need to run some tests," the veterinarian announced finally. "Blood work, ultrasound, possibly x-rays. It could be several things from a simple infection to something more serious." She hesitated, glancing at the children. "Would you like me to discuss this with the adults first?" Mrs. Thompson shook her head. We don't hide difficult things from the children. They understand that pets, like people, can get sick, that part of loving someone is being there through the hard times too. It was an approach Sarah deeply respected, the honesty, the refusal to shield the children from the realities of life and potential loss, while still providing the support they needed to process those realities. The most concerning possibility, Dr. Chen explained to all of them, is a blockage or a tumor in her digestive tract that would explain the symptoms we're seeing and would likely require surgery to address. Max whined softly, as if understanding the gravity of the situation, his body tense with anxiety. "What about him?" the boy asked, gesturing to the dog. "He knows something's wrong. He's been trying to tell us for days before we even noticed." Dr. Chen nodded, acknowledging his observation. Animals often sense illness in their companions. Sometimes, before humans detect any symptoms, it's part of their deep connection, their attunement to each other. She considered for a moment. Would it be all right if Max stays with Luna during some of the testing? It might reduce stress for both of them. It was an unusual request, one that went against standard veterinary protocols. But the Bonded Pairs Initiative had been challenging such protocols since its inception, demonstrating repeatedly that accommodating animal bonds often led to better medical outcomes, reduced stress, and faster healing. The Thompsons readily agreed, and arrangements were made for Max to remain in the treatment room while Luna underwent her initial tests, the staff creating a space where he could watch without interfering, providing reassurance through his presence alone. The waiting was difficult. For everyone, Sarah sat with the Thompson family in a private consultation room, the children drawing pictures for Luna to make her feel better, the adults attempting conversation that inevitably circled back to concerns about Luna's condition, to memories of all she had overcome already, to hopes that she would overcome this challenge too. "She's a fighter," Mr. Thompson said with quiet conviction. "She's been defying the odds since before she even opened her eyes." Sarah nodded, remembering. The tiny kitten in the garbage bag, the improbable survival, the extraordinary bond that had sustained her through those first precarious weeks. When Dr. Chen finally returned, her expression was serious, but not defeated. "It is a blockage," she confirmed, "a mass in her intestine that's preventing normal digestion. We need to do surgery to remove it and determine whether it's benign or malignant." She outlined the risks, the options, the expected recovery process. The good news is that she's otherwise healthy, young, strong. The surgery itself has a high success rate, though of course there are always risks with anesthesia, with any invasive procedure. The Thompsons listened, asked questions, considered alternatives, ultimately making the decision. To proceed. "How soon?" Mrs. Thompson asked. "I've scheduled it for this afternoon," Dr. Chen replied. "The sooner we address the blockage, the better her chances." She hesitated, then added, "There's another consideration, Max's reaction when we separate. Them for the surgery and recovery, he's already showing significant anxiety." It was a concern Sarah understood well, having seen how deeply bonded animals responded to separation, especially during times of stress, how their distress could sometimes complicate recovery, create additional medical challenges. "Is there any way he could remain nearby?" she asked. "Not in the operating room, obviously, but perhaps where he can still sense her presence." Dr. Chen considered the question. "We could set up a space in the recovery area where he could stay once she's out of surgery. It's not standard protocol, but," she smiled slightly, "Max and Luna have been rewriting protocols since they arrived here." The plan was established. The Thompsons would take Max home during the surgery, returning with him. Once Luna was in recovery, the children would create comfort items, blankets with familiar scents, toys that might provide reassurance during the separation, everyone finding ways to contribute, to support both animals through this unexpected crisis as the family prepared to leave, promising to return later. Sarah found herself alone with Dr. Chen, both of them watching through the window as the technicians prepared Luna for surgery. Max still by her side, still maintaining his protective vigil. "It's remarkable, isn't it?" the veterinarian said softly. "After all this time, after all they've both been through, that connection remains so strong, so essential to them both." Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "Do you think?" she began, then hesitated, unsure how to frame the question without sounding mystical, unrealistic. "Do you think his presence all those months ago when we first found them is why she's here now, why she survived? When the odds were so against her?" Dr. Chen considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I think connection matters," she said finally. "I think it matters in ways we're only beginning to understand scientifically, ways that traditional medicine has often overlooked or dismissed. I think Max gave Luna something to live for, just as she gave him someone to protect. And I think those imperatives, those connections, can sometimes make the difference between giving up and holding on." She looked at Sarah directly. "What I know for certain is that they rewrote my understanding of what's possible, both medically and emotionally, and that's changed how I practice medicine every day since." The hours of Luna's surgery stretched endlessly. Sarah remained at the clinic. Though there was nothing practical she could do, her presence a form of solidarity with both the animal, whose life hung in the balance, and the family who loved her. The Thompsons had taken Max home as planned, the children creating a special comfort space for him, with items carrying Luna's scent blankets, toys, the small bed they sometimes shared. But according to text updates, the dog remained inconsolable, pacing, whining, checking every room as if Luna might somehow reappear, refusing food or comfort, fixated on the absence of his companion. He knows, the boy had written in a message relayed by his mother. He knows she's in danger and he can't protect her. There was wisdom in this assessment. Sarah thought a recognition of the depth of Max's understanding, his awareness that extended beyond what many might attribute to an animal, the complexity of his emotional life, the reality of his concern. Dr. Chen had promised to text the moment Luna was out of surgery, and now as the third hour began, Sarah found herself checking her phone, obsessively willing it to bring good news, fighting against the creeping dread that came with each passing minute. When the message finally came, it was blessedly positive. "Surgery complete, mass removed, successfully, Luna stable, in recovery." Sarah exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, sending the update immediately to the Thompsons, who responded that they were already on their way with Max when they arrived 30 minutes later. The dog strained at his leash, clearly sensing Luna's presence in the building, his focus absolute, his determination to reach her evident in every line of his body. The children followed, carrying the drawings they had made, the small stuffed toy that was Luna's favorite. Chen met them in the reception area, her surgical scrubs replaced by her regular clothing, her expression tired but satisfied. She did very well, she assured them, leading the way to the recovery area. "We were able to remove the entire mass, and preliminary examination suggests it may be benign, though we've sent it for biopsy to be certain." The relief in the room was palpable, a collective exhale, a tentative embrace of hope. "When can we see her?" the girl asked. Voicing the question everyone was thinking, "She's still waking up from anesthesia," Dr. Chen explained. "But you can look through the window, and once she's more alert, Max can join her if he remains calm." They gathered at the observation window, looking into the dimly lit recovery room, where Luna lay on a heated bed, monitoring equipment tracking her vital signs, her small body rising and falling with each breath, the stillness so different from her usual vibrant energy. Max pressed his nose to the glass, whining softly, his tail giving a single wag when he spotted her. "He sees her," the boy whispered. "He knows she's alive." Sarah nodded, watching as the dog's posture changed, slightly, the desperate tension easing somewhat. Now that he had visual confirmation of Luna's continued existence, the reassurance that, while she was not well, she was present, was fighting, was returning an hour later, Luna was awake enough for Max to enter the recovery room under the careful supervision of a technician. He approached her bed with uncharacteristic gentleness, sniffing delicately at her form, his tail wagging slowly when she responded with a faint meow of recognition. "That's the most responsive she's been since waking up," the technician noted, making a notation in Luna's chart. "Her heart rate is stabilizing too, just from his presence." It was another piece of evidence for the file Sarah had been building, documenting the medical benefits of maintained bonds, the measurable physiological improvements that came from allowing bonded animals to support each other through illness and recovery. The Thompsons were permitted to visit briefly, each family member taking a moment to gently stroke Luna's fur, to whisper encouragement, the children placing their drawings where she could see them when she became more alert, promising to return the next day and the day after for as long as she needed to remain at this clinic. The hardest part now is preventing her from doing too much too soon during recovery, Dr. Chen explained. As they prepared to leave, cats typically bounce back quickly, want to jump, climb, play before their incisions have fully healed. "Max will help with that," Mr. Thompson observed, watching as the dog settled carefully on a blanket the staff had placed next to Luna's recovery bed. "He's always been protective, but he seems to understand when she needs extra care," the veterinarian nodded. "We've arranged for him to stay with her tonight. We'll have staff monitoring them constantly, of course, but I suspect they'll both rest better together than apart." It was another deviation from standard protocols. Another example of how Max and Luna's case continued to influence veterinary practices to demonstrate the importance of considering emotional bonds as part of medical care. Sarah stayed after the Thompsons left, wanting a few quiet moments with the animals who had changed the trajectory of her life, who had inspired the work that now defined her days. Max acknowledged her presence with a brief glance, but his attention remained fixed on Luna, who had fallen back asleep, her small body curled toward him. Despite the medical equipment, despite the discomfort she must be feeling, seeking the familiar comfort of his presence, even in her semi-conscious state. "You two," Sarah whispered, shaking her head in wonder at their continued connection, at the way they instinctively turned toward each other in crisis. She was preparing to leave when Dr. Chen returned carrying 2 cups of coffee, offering one to Sarah. "Thought you might need this," she said, sitting beside her, both of them watching the animals through the observation window. "Long day." Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully, the warmth and caffeine welcome after the emotional roller coaster of the past hours. "Do you think," she began, then paused, reformulating her question, "what are her chances, honestly?" Dr. Chen considered carefully before answering. "The surgery itself went as well as we could have hoped. The mass was encapsulated, hadn't spread to surrounding tissue. If the biopsy confirms it's benign, her prognosis is excellent. If it's malignant, we'll need to discuss treatment options, but she's young, otherwise healthy, and has the best support system I've ever seen, both human and canine." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as Max maintained his vigil, occasionally rising to check on Luna, gently nudging her with his nose when her breathing pattern changed, settling again only when he was satisfied she was stable. "You know what strikes me about their story," Dr. Chen said finally. "It's not just that they survived against the odds or formed this remarkable bond. It's that they've changed how we see what's possible. They've literally rewritten medical protocols, influenced adoption practices, inspired an entire movement around bonded animals, all because they refused to accept the limitations we thought existed." Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what the veterinarian meant. Max and Luna had defied categorization from the beginning, had challenged assumptions about species boundaries, about what constituted family, about the depth and significance of animal relationships, had demonstrated through their lived experience That connection transcended conventional understanding, created possibilities where none had seemed to exist. They remind me every day why. "This work matters," she said softly. "Why it's worth fighting the bureaucracy, the budget constraints, the heartbreak that sometimes comes with it. Because every so often we get to witness something like this. Something that changes everything." 3 days after Luna's surgery, the biopsy results arrived, bringing the news everyone had been hoping for. The mass was benign, a rare but non-cancerous growth that had been completely removed with clean margins. "No further treatment needed," Dr. Chen announced to the gathered Thompson family, Sarah, and the clinic staff who had become invested in Luna's recovery. "Just rest-restricted activity for a few weeks while the incision heals, and she should make a complete recovery." The relief was palpable, the children hugging each other, the adults exchanging glances that conveyed everything. Words couldn't, the staff celebrating another success. Another life saved. Luna had been recovering well, her energy returning gradually, her appetite improving, her interest in her surroundings growing day by day. Max had remained by her side, the clinic making unprecedented accommodations to allow him to stay overnight, to provide the comfort and security that seemed to accelerate her healing. The Thompsons visited for hours each day, bringing favorite toys, gentle updates about home, sometimes reading storybooks aloud which seemed to soothe both animals. The clinic staff documented everything, photographing the pair, creating detailed notes on Luna's responsiveness to Max's presence, her vital signs when he was nearby versus the few brief times he had been removed for his own care. "We're writing this up as a case study for the veterinary journal," Dr. Chen told Sarah as they watched a technician prepare Luna for her return home. "The measurable benefits of maintained bonds during recovery, the physiological responses, the behavioral indicators, it's compelling evidence that could change standard protocols." Sarah nodded, understanding the how significance. From emergency rescue to medical case study, they just keep rewriting the rules, she observed with a smile, watching as Max supervised Luna's preparation, his attention never wavering, his protective instincts as strong as ever. Despite the clinical setting, despite the presence of trusted humans, the homecoming was carefully orchestrated, the Thompsons having prepared a recovery space in the family room where Luna could be comfortable, contained, yet still part of household life. A modified dog bed had been placed on a low table, allowing Max to lie beside her without putting pressure on her healing body. Toys and favorite blankets arranged nearby, a small ramp constructed so that when she was allowed more movement, she could navigate safely between levels. "We've kitten-proofed everything," Mrs. Thompson explained, "removed anything she might try to jump on, limited access to stairs. The vet students even helped us create an indoor exercise plan for when she's ready." The first night home was challenging, Luna restless in the unfamiliar recovery setup, Max alert to her every movement, the family taking turns keeping watch, ensuring Luna didn't pull at her stitches, didn't attempt activities beyond her current capabilities. By morning, they had developed a system, Max alerting them with a soft whine when Luna seemed uncomfortable, the children taking shifts, reading stories to both animals, providing distraction. Mrs. Thompson administering medication on schedule, Mr. Thompson managing the household to create the quiet, calm environment Luna needed for optimal healings. Era visited regularly, observing, bringing updates from the clinic staff who missed their special patients, documenting the recovery process for both the medical case study and the bonded pairs program's ongoing research. "What strikes me most," she told the Thompsons during one such visit, "is how their relationship has adapted to these new circumstances. Max has always been protective, but now he's learned to be gentle in different ways, to provide comfort without crowding, to alert you when something's wrong." The family nodded, having witnessed this evolution daily. "He seems to understand exactly what she needs at each stage," the boy observed, "sometimes better than we do." As Luna's recovery progressed from the critical first days to the steady improvement of the second week, to the beginning challenges of limiting an increasingly energetic cat, from doing too much too soon. Max's role shifted as well, from constant vigilance to playful distraction, providing entertainment that didn't require jumping or climbing, creating games they could play while Luna remained safely on her recovery bed. It's like he instinctively knows her limits, Dr. Chen remarked during a follow-up examination. He engages her enough to prevent boredom, but redirects when she attempts something potentially harmful. 2 weeks after Luna's return home, Sarah arrived for a visit to find a significant change: the recovery bed on the table empty. The containment barriers moved aside, her momentary concern quickly replaced by delight when Mrs. Thompson led her to the living room, where Luna was exploring cautiously, moving from one piece of furniture to another, her movements measured but purposeful. Max following at a respectful distance, watchful but no longer hovering. Dr. Chen gave her clearance for supervised freedom yesterday, Mrs. Thompson explained, said her incision is healing beautifully. That gentle movement would be good for her, watching Luna navigate her expanded world. Sarah was struck by the resilience of this animal who had survived abandonment as a newborn, critical illness as a kitten, and now major surgery as a young adult. Each challenge met with the same quiet determination, the same will to live, the same connection to the unlikely guardian who had found her in that garbage bag, who had somehow recognized her value, her right to exist, her capacity for joy long before anyone else had seen it. "She's quite the survivor, isn't she?" Sarah remarked, as Luna paused in her exploration to bump heads affectionately with Max, who had settled nearby. "They both are," the girl said, joining Sarah on the couch, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. "Dad says that's why they understand each other so well. They both know what it means to be thrown away and found again." There was profound wisdom in this observation. Sarah thought a recognition of the shared experience that had formed the foundation of Max and Luna's bond, the trauma that might have broken them but had instead created something remarkable, something healing, something that continued to expand outward, touching other lives, inspiring change, creating possibility where before there had been only limitation. 3 weeks after surgery, Luna was cleared for normal activity, her recovery complete, her energy fully returned, though she would always carry the small scar, a reminder of what she had overcome. The Thompsons celebrated with a special dinner, Max and Luna receiving appropriate treats, the children creating a "Get Well" banner that hung in the kitchen. The family gathering to share stories of the journey from those first frightening days. When Luna had stopped eating to the triumph of her return to health, "We should do something," Mrs. Thompson said as they cleared the dishes. "Something to mark this milestone, but also to give back to help other animals who might not have the resources, the support that Luna had." The idea resonated with everyone. A scholarship fund was established in Luna's name, providing financial assistance for emergency veterinary care for families who couldn't otherwise afford it, for bonded pairs who might otherwise be separated due to medical costs. The Thompsons made the first donation. The children contributed. Their allowance friends, family, community members who had followed Luna's story online added their support. The clinic offered discounted services for scholarship recipients, creating a sustainable model that could help dozens of animals each year, from trash to treasure to legacy. Sarah thought, watching the initiative take shape, seeing once again how connection created possibility, how healing extended beyond the individual to touch the wider world. 2 years to the day after Sarah had stopped her car on that fateful evening, she sat in the Riverside Shelter's new Bonded Pairs Wing, a state-of-the-art facility designed specifically to accommodate animals who needed to stay together during their journey from rescue to forever home. The space featured adaptable enclosures that could be configured for various species combinations, specialized medical equipment for treating bonded animals simultaneously, and most importantly, a philosophy that recognized and honored animal connections as essential rather than incidental. What had begun as a small program inspired by two abandoned animals had grown into a model adopted by shelters across the country, changing countless lives, both animal and human. "I can't believe how far we've come," Margaret said, joining Sarah in the observation area where they could watch without disturbing the animals currently in residence. "From one makeshift enclosure to this," she gestured to the facility. Around them built with donations, corporate sponsorships, grants, all inspired by the story that had captured so many hearts, and the Luna Scholarship Fund has already helped 37 animals receive emergency care this year alone, Sarah nodded, feeling a profound sense of completion of purpose fulfilled beyond anything she could have imagined when she'd first spotted that small puppy sitting alone in the street. The celebration, planned for that afternoon, would bring together everyone who had been part of the journey, the Thompsons, of course, with Max and Luna. As guests of honor, Dr. Chen and her clinic staff officer Rodriguez from Animal Crimes, the volunteers and staff who had implemented the Bonded Pairs Initiative representatives from other shelters now running their own versions of the program. The many donors whose generosity had made the new wing possible. Even the mayor would be attending to cut the ribbon, officially dedicating the space that would change the future. For so many vulnerable animals, Max and Luna arrived early, the now fully grown dog still maintaining his protective watch over his feline companion, though their relationship had evolved into something more balanced, more mutual. Over the years, Luna had grown into a confident cat, independent yet deeply attached to Max. Their communication so refined, so subtle, that it often seemed they could read each other's thoughts, anticipate each other's needs in ways that continued to astonish everyone. Who witnessed it, the Thompsons' children, now older, but still devoted to the animals they had helped heal, ran ahead to greet Sarah, eager to share the latest updates. "Luna caught a mouse in the backyard yesterday," the boy reported proudly. "And Max helped. He herded it away from the fence so she could pounce." The girl nodded enthusiastically. "They have a whole system. Now they hunt together, even though Max never actually touches the mice." Sarah smiled at this latest evolution in their partnership, this new expression of their bond adapting to their natural instincts while maintaining their connection. "And how are they doing with the new addition?" she asked, knowing the Thompsons had recently adopted a senior dog from the Bonded Pairs program, a gentle golden retriever who had lost his elderly owner. "They've accepted him completely," Mrs. Thompson said, joining the conversation. "Max showed him all the best spots in the yard, where to find sun patches for napping, which windows have the best views. Luna was a bit standoffish at first, but now she sleeps on his back sometimes when he's in his bed." It was exactly what Sarah had hoped to hear, the expansion of their circle, the generosity of spirit that allowed them to welcome another who needed the security of family, the completion of a cycle that had begun with their own rescue and now extended to offering safety to another. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful, the mayor acknowledging the profound impact of one rescue story on an entire community's approach to animal welfare, Margaret speaking about the evolution of the Bonded Pairs Initiative, Dr. Chen sharing the medical research that had emerged from Max and Luna's case, the children reading a poem they had written about second chances, about finding family in unexpected places, about the capacity for love that existed in all living beings. The ribbon was cut. The new wing officially opened cameras, flashing social media posts, already being shared. The story continuing to ripple outward, touching new lives, inspiring new connections afterwards. As the formal part of the event transitioned to a more relaxed celebration, Sarah found herself sitting quietly with Max and Luna in a corner of the new facility, the dog resting his head on her lap, the cat curled comfortably against his side, both of them seeming to recognize the significance of this moment. This return to where their journey together had solidified this acknowledgement of how far they had come from those first desperate hours. "You two changed everything, you know that, right?" she told them softly, scratching behind Max's ears, stroking Luna's sleek fur. "Not just for yourselves, but for so many others, the Thompsons joined her, bringing cake plates for the humans, treats for the animals settling beside them in companionable silence. Before Mr. Thompson spoke, "We were just talking about how different our lives would be if you hadn't stopped that night, if you'd driven past, like everyone else," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Not just Max and Luna's lives, but all of ours. The children have decided they both want to work in animal welfare when they grow up because of what they've witnessed, because of the difference they've seen it make." Sarah felt the weight of his words, the recognition of how single moments of decision could alter so many trajectories. "I almost didn't stop," she admitted for the first time. "I was exhausted, discouraged, questioning whether anything I did really mattered in the face of so much need, so much suffering." She looked at Max and Luna, now healthy, secure, loved. "I tell that to the new volunteers sometimes, that even the rescuers have moments of doubt, days when it all seems hopeless. But that's exactly when a single act of compassion matters most, when it can change everything." The Thompsons nodded, understanding the honesty in her words, the vulnerability, the recognition that healing was rarely linear, rarely perfect, but always worth pursuing. As the afternoon waned, Sarah found herself standing with Dr. Chen in the shelter's garden, watching through the window as the Thompson family prepared to take Max and Luna home, the animals moving comfortably among the guests, accepting gentle attention from admirers before returning to the children's sides. "Do you ever think about how improbable their story is?" the veterinarian asked. "A puppy finding a discarded kitten, both of them surviving against overwhelming odds forming. This bond that defied everything we thought we knew about animal relationships." Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "It reminds me that we never really know what's possible until we try, until we refuse to accept the limitations we've been told exist." Dr. Chen smiled. "That's the real legacy, isn't it? Not just the programs or the facility or even the animals saved, but the reminder that connection matters, that it can transform suffering into healing, isolation into belonging, despair into purpose." She gestured toward Max and Luna, now heading toward the exit with their family. "They taught us that sometimes the most broken beginnings lead to the most beautiful journeys, if we're brave enough to see value where others see only damage, to recognize that every living being has the capacity for connection, for recovery, for joy." As Sarah watched the Thompsons leave Max and Luna walking side by side through doors that would not have existed without them, she felt a sense of completion, not an ending, but a meaningful passage, a recognition that some stories continue to unfold long after their beginning chapters have been written, that some connections once formed remain unbroken, becoming part of something larger than themselves, rippling outward in ways that cannot be predicted or contained, that sometimes the most profound transformations begin in the darkest moments with the smallest creatures, with the simple recognition that every life matters, every connection has value, every act of compassion creates possibility where none seemed to exist before. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't measured on any scoreboard, but in how we honor those we once thought lost by continuing to play the game of life with the same courage and heart they showed us every day.